Life is all about the stories that you end up actually telling yourself. Regardless of whether that story actually aligns with reality or not, that's really what life is all about. And sometimes our thoughts get so jumbled up in our head that we actually forget to differentiate between what is actually our reality and fantasy land and just basically just doom land, for lack of better words, right? We create either internal hell or internal heaven within ourselves, and that's really the best way to describe it. We always have two perspectives of life, and those perspectives seem to be very extreme. We either have a very doom and gloom perspective, or we have like a very blissful perspective that like everything is going so smoothly and everything's going great and everything is fine and I have no problems in this world. And both perspectives are wrong. The reality of it is somewhere in the middle, because not everything in this life can be going according to plan, and not everything in this life cannot be going according to plan. I hope that makes sense. But the reason for this video is kind of just the detrimental effect that we always have about living in our own heads. See, like I mentioned, life is all about the stories that we actually end up telling ourselves, and that's what makes it so necessary for us to actually talk to other people as well. You see, we end up getting caught in our soul minds so often that we actually end up telling ourselves that we actually don't deserve anything good at all, that no good is ever going to come from us. And that's such a detrimental way of thinking, because imagine you're actually telling like your best friend about this, or your parents, or just your siblings, or whoever that you actually can confide in, and they'll quickly shake you back to reality and they'll tell you like, what are you on? Like, this line of thinking is not realistic. There is so much goodness that comes out of you as well, but you're just not seeing it in the moment because you keep on telling yourself the same story again and again, and you hold that to be true even though that's not reality. The problem is, and I've talked about this in my previous videos as well, that we keep on telling ourselves this story about I'm not good enough. I don't know how to do anything. I don't know how to do this or that, or I'm never going to amount to anything. This story that you constantly tell yourself is eventually going to become your truth on the inside, even though on the external world, it's not actually going to be true. And that is why it is so necessary for us to actually confide in other people, I would say. You should always talk about your problems. And the reason for that is that you can actually get some mental and emotional clarity because of that. The stories that you keep on telling yourself about how you're not good enough for anything doesn't mean anything. It really doesn't. It just means jack shit, to be honest with you, because you can amount to different things. Like, imagine you're telling your best friend that like you don't feel like you're gonna amount to anything, and they'll quickly easily point out to you that like, dude, we've known each other for years. You graduated high school, you're going to college, you're doing all these different things, you have your own YouTube channel, you're good at painting, whatever the case might be. And you kind of get some mental and emotional clarity about, wait, I you actually have been progressing through your life, but it's just very hard to reflect back on certain things, especially when you feel like you're not doing enough, when you feel like you have not reached your destination yet. And that's completely fine, but that's why it's so important to confide in other people, so people can actually give you that reality check that you really do need. And let's say, for example, if you don't have somebody to talk to, let's say you're just a loner itself. I challenge you to at least write out your thoughts, write out your problems, or do something and just jot them down on a piece of paper. Write down all your problems on a piece of paper and just let it be. Think about it realistically, think about it tangibly at that point. Because when you actually jot something down on a piece of paper, when you actually speak it out open into the real world, or whenever you're like talking in front of a camera and you kind of play it back, you quickly realize how foolish you actually are being. And I've had this experience several times. Like, sometimes I'll be talking to my friends and they'll just look at me like I'm crazy because I've said some crazy things. And those crazy things mean like I'm never going to amount to something, or I don't know what I'm doing in life, or I'm not progressing in life. And they'll quickly point out to me, they're like, you should, dude. You've done so much over the past few months. Like, we wouldn't even be able to imagine doing any of this stuff. You're getting yourself in check. You're getting yourself fit. You're doing all of these things. Like, you're progressing through life. You just don't see it because you're progressing 0.1% of the time. But as the days compound and the weeks compound and the months compound, as time keeps on going on, you're gonna look back and you're gonna say, oh shit, I actually really did progress. But the thing is, we never get to see our own progress because what do we compare our future self to? We don't compare our future self to our past self. We always compare our future self to the present self. So your point of reference is always going to be shattered. Your point of reference is always like, okay, I am right here right now. I'm 50% done, but I'm trying to get to 100%, right? So you're like, oh crap, I still have so much to go. But you quickly realize that you're already halfway there. Because as human beings, we have this terrible habit of never just actually reflecting back on our past and actually realizing on how far we've actually come. We have a great habit of reflecting back on our past and being nostalgic about it and saying, "Oh my God, I actually was so much happier back in the day." We as human beings like literally do that all the time, especially when we're talking about like generational wars, right? Like the millennials are just always shitting on the Gen Zers and the boomers are always shitting on the millennials. It's natural to do because everybody's like, oh my God, the past was so much better. And it's complete bullshit. Like, it's not better. Like, you have to look at things from a certain viewpoint. You just think that you're not doing as well as you should be because you have these lofty expectations, of course, but also because you just keep on looking down upon yourself so much. And that is why it's so important for you to actually either note out your problems or just talk to somebody about them because it'll give you a point of clarity and a moment of clarity about yourself that you yourself cannot give, especially in those low moments. That is when it is completely necessary for you to actually just sit down with a journal, maybe sit down with your best friend, maybe sit down with your parents and just talk about what it is that you're feeling and how you're feeling and why you're feeling like this. So once you speak it out into the real world, somebody can easily correct you. Maybe sometimes your friends are also going to say that, like, yeah, you're doing pretty bad right now, but that's okay because you're going through a rough time. And I'm here to tell you that that's okay as well. If that is your answer, that yeah, you're doing terribly because you're going through a rough time, like, it's life. It happens. Like, you don't have to beat yourself up because of it. And besides, what benefit does it actually do to beat yourself up for something that is not under your control? I know I do that at times, but like, it's not beneficial at all. It's not productive. It doesn't increase the quality of my life in any type of way. It actually decreases my quality of life, if anything. So talk to people, man. Like, talk about your problems, talk about what you're dealing with. If you want to see a professional, go see a professional. But remember to talk about your problems and everything that you're dealing with. And like, even in your moments of happiness, when you feel like you're on top of the world, sometimes we also become arrogant when we feel like we're on top of the world. And sometimes we need our friends to pull us back down into reality, right? And those both of those things are very necessary. You can't always be at this peak of the mountain of arrogance, so you need to get brought back down to baseline, right? You can't always be like in the pit of the ocean in the Mariana Trench. Like, you need to be brought up at times as well. And that is what talking about your problems will do. And I know what you're probably thinking. I know you're thinking that, like, oh my God, I don't have anybody that I can turn to. Nobody really loves me like that, this and that, blah, blah, blah. First of all, majority of you, I'm telling you that you're completely wrong about that. You actually have a ton of people that actually love you for who you actually are. And let's say, for example, if you have convinced yourself that you actually have nobody, or maybe you just don't have anybody in close proximity to you, even a phone call away or a text message away, start writing in a journal. Make like a burner Twitter account and start just tweeting out every single one of your problems out there. Now, what this will do is that it'll give you an outlet of just getting it all out in your brain, because what happens is that when we have our thoughts in our brain, it's just all jumbled up together and we can't make sense of any of it. But maybe once you actually put it out in a Twitter thread, or maybe even in a Google Doc or whatever, then you can actually try your best to like make sense of it. Try to put it in chronological order. Try to put a priority list of all the worries that you actually have about the future and the past and the present, whatever it is, so you can at least have like a listed format of everything that you're actually worried about. And then from there, you can actually have a task list of everything that you can actually take care of today or tomorrow or 2 weeks from now. And if all else fails, if you're not good at writing, if you're not good at doing any of those things, Make an audio recording. Just put it on your phone. Let your phone automatically transcribe it. If you can't even do that, if the transcription feature doesn't work on your iPhone, go on TikTok and then just make a burner TikTok account and just talk about your problems in like a 10-minute video and just record that and then just caption it with auto captions and then just rewatch it whenever you actually forget about everything, because I promise you that happens as well. If you record a video today just talking about all your problems, even if you're crying about it, you look back at it a month from now and you'll quickly see that, like, oh my god, a lot of the things that I was actually worried about, a lot of the things that I was actually crying about, I didn't even remember crying about them in the first place. So maybe it's just that our perception is so warped because of our minds, because we live in our head all the damn time. So because of that, we keep on suffering because we don't have our thoughts in order. That's why reach out to your friends, man. Reach out to the people that love you, because I promise you there are several people that love you. And if you are too scared to do that, then start just noting things down. Start just having a journal about like all of your problems and all of the worries that you have and all the happy moments that you have as well, because it's not going to be all doom and gloom, I promise you. Life is always about happiness as well as it is about sadness and depression and all of these negative emotions as well. We sometimes just do a really bad job of actually reflecting on the positive moments that we actually gain from life. And unfortunately, I feel like that's a skill that only old people have, at least at this point, just because we haven't really cultivated that skill at all. And it's really not talked about being grateful and being reflective about life and having a positive outlook. So do this for yourself. You're not doing anybody else any favors. You're being selfish right now. And be selfish. Talk about your problems. Do whatever. Like, tell your friends that, hey, I need help. This is what I'm going through. If you need to see a therapist, see a therapist. If you need to, talk to a religious figure of your religion, then like talk to them. Do whatever it is that you actually need to, but get your thoughts out of your head. Stop living in your head, because it's not good for you. How much analyzing and how much overthinking are you actually going to do before you actually get the message that, hey, this is not the best way to process information? Because a lot of times it is not. Anyways, guys, this was episode number 135 of the Daily Lessons podcast. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel as well, because I make videos like this all the time, and I would really appreciate it if you leave a comment down below as well, because it'll help me out tremendously and it'll mean the world to me. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye, guys.